what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. Along with me is Chris Fry. We are the founders and directors of the Foot Candle Film Society and the annual Foot Candle Film Festival. And now here we are, co-host of the Foot Candle Films podcast. I worked the word foot candle into that sentence at least 3 times, maybe 4. And how are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing well. I was a responsible movie critic yesterday. I did not go to a late screening of the film that we're going to review. I went to a 5:45 screening.
5:45. That's the golden hour for movie going, isn't it?
Sure. I hadn't had dinner, so I'm not sleepy, because I've had a full meal. So I was responsible after the debacle of the Asteroid City review, where I was struggling to kind of figure out what was going on. I was like, okay, I'm going to be more responsible. I'm taking my duties as a movie critic seriously. Yeah. So,
I did the 8 o'clock show, so I went a little later than you, but I was still fine. Still did okay with it. I can't do the 9:30 movies.
No.
That is definitely a sign of our age at this point and attention span.
And having full-time jobs.
Yeah, so, there's that. But 9:30 movies, if I see a 9:30 or 9:45 movie, it's not going to quite cut it if I want to be able to give it a decent review the next day. Right. So it looks like we fared okay with our screenings yesterday of the film that we're going to be discussing in this week's episode.
80 for Brady.
I still haven't watched it. No, well, you made the mistake, Chris, of just kind of leaving an open-ended window of time on when I need to watch that film. I think you should have been a little more definitive and said I needed to watch it by a certain date. I work better with deadlines.
So I should start adding a movie every month. So I could add Book Club, the next chapter that you have to watch in addition to 80 for Brady.
Penalize me
and I'm going to keep piling on movies that you're going to be forced to review.
Chris is referring to, we had our Oscar Academy Award pool, and our going thing is that the loser, whoever picks the fewest number of awards correctly, has to watch a film of the winner's choosing and review it on the show. But like I said, no deadline was given. It was
True.
As far as I'm concerned, I have until the next Academy Awards ceremony to do it. Now, if you want to give me a deadline, I respond really well to deadlines. I do really well when I know something's on the line time-wise. But no, we are not going to be reviewing 80 for Brady.
Phew.
Although one day I'm just going to pop on the show and surprise you and be like, oh, hey, by the way,
if it's part of your recommendations, I'm going to be shocked.
Here's a review of 80 for Brady. No, today we're going to be reviewing the latest film by director James Mangold. It is, may have heard of it, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, the latest in the swashbuckling epic, starring, of course, Harrison Ford, also featuring Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Antonio Banderas, and some others. We're going to be discussing that film and giving our review of it here in just a minute. And after we do that, just later in the show, Chris and I also, it's that time of the month where we're to give our recommendations. We kind of moved our show format. Instead of forcing me to come up with a recommendation every single episode, which I could not do. We've gone to once a month in our kind of rotation of episodes doing a recommendation. So that's this week. Chris and I will both be giving a recommendation of a film we think is worth checking out if you're so inclined to want to look for something to watch or fill some time in front of a TV screen in the coming days. We may have an option for you. But Chris, let's go ahead and get into that first and main review. It is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
I'm retiring.
Well, in that case, what are we drinking?
Same for the goddaughter.
Dad told me you found something on a train during the war. A dial that could change the course of history.
Why are you chasing the thing that drove your father crazy? Don't move.
We need to get out of here. Stop! Sorry.
Helena!
Dial of Destiny marks the first time that Steven Spielberg was not calling the shots as director on an Indiana Jones film. It also marks the first time that George Lucas was not involved in writing the script. Enter James Mangold, director of Logan, Ford vs. Ferrari, and Walk the Line, with writers Jez and John Henry Butterworth, who penned Ford vs. Ferrari. The obvious point to start the conversation is, what did you make of Mangold donning the director's fedora and the Butterworths cracking the whip with the script? Or I could throw you for a fanboy loop and ask, what did you make of the missing Paramount logo gag?
Oh, very good point. You did throw me for a loop. You're right. This film does not have a Paramount logo. Kind of one of those smash cuts where it's like it goes from the Paramount logo to something.
Full disclosure
in the film. Yeah,
Alan is the bigger fan of the Indiana Jones franchise. I like the films, but I'm just not quite as enamored with them. I did some homework before going to see Dial of Destiny. Yes, I'm very familiar with Raiders, so didn't need to watch that one. But I watched Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Crystal Skull all again within a week and a half, so I could be very familiar with like what I'm supposed to expect. And I kind of like I know about the gag, but I'd forgotten how you transition from the Paramount logo to a mountain in Raiders of the Lost Ark. In Temple of Doom, it was to a big giant gong that had a mountain on it. Last Crusade, it was a mountain in the Grand Canyon. And then with Crystal Skull, it was a gopher hill. So the very first thing, because it's the very first thing you see in the film usually, is the logo, and then it goes to the opening shot of the film.
That's a good point.
So I was all like, okay. So they do the Paramount logo. I'm like, okay, here it comes. And then they go to the Lucasfilm logo.
Yeah.
And then they basically go to a shot of something that's just rectangular. So otherwise, it kind of unless you're really keyed in, you wouldn't even know that it is the same shape as like the Lucasfilm logo, because all it is a rectangle, which is like, so that right there to me was like, this is James Mangold. This is not Steven Spielberg. This is a different set of writers. It's going to be an Indiana Jones film, but it is going to be different. So, Alan.
And you very good point. You have thrown me for a loop. Now that's all I'm going to be thinking about the rest of
the logo, missing logo gag.
Okay, so you're right. I am a huge fan of the Indiana Jones character. He is probably my favorite fictionalized, quote, serialized character. Meaning, yes, there are other characters in film history that I like more, but as far as someone who is in a ongoing series of films as kind of a major movie star character, Indiana Jones is it. I mean, it's my favorite franchise. The first three movies I feel like are just a near perfect trilogy of films that I just love and can enjoy. I love the swashbuckling epic. I love the serialized, a throwback to the 1920s, 30s serials. The archaeological spin, everything. It works. Harrison Ford, this is the role. I like him as Han Solo.
Okay.
But something about Indiana Jones is still kind of my thing.
Fair enough.
So it was tough when I saw the fourth movie, Crystal Skull, because even though I do recognize, I think it's an okay movie. I think there's some moments of it I really like. I think there's some scenes I really like. But overall, I was let down because it just did not come anywhere near the first three movies for me in style or tone or what I wanted out of a film from him in this stage of his life. So I'm trepidatious going into Dial of Destiny for sure. And plus, you spend the whole new director thing, like you said. It does make me a little concerned going into it.
Sure.
So, but here's my take on Dial of Destiny. I think this film, you take a very understandably older, a very different place in his life, Indiana Jones, than we're used to seeing. Mm-hmm. I think we put this film in a very, very interesting period of Indy's life, in a very interesting period of time in society around him. Mm-hmm. I think we add
which it jumps forward quite a bit from where the other three movies had taken place.
Well, the other three now Crystal Skull took place in the 50s. This one's in the 60s, so it all kind of
so it's supposed to be 10 years after.
Yeah, but the first three definitely happened all kind of within a 10-year span. Okay. Then we jump forward quite a bit to the 50s. Then we jump forward again to late 60s. I think the time period is interesting. I think seeing the character in this time period is great. You add what I think is a very interesting supporting character that is going to become a kind of the co-star of the movie, and I think drives the story forward. Very interesting relationship between him and this new character. I like her presence in the film.
Talking about Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Phoebe Waller, yeah. You put this in a very good Indiana Jones story. Okay, I think from a story standpoint, the plot is very good. It's a very typical Indiana Jones movie. It's a, it has some beats of the original Raiders and kind of the progression that the story's taking and where it tries to go as an ending, kind of there's a lot of similarities. It's good. It's a classic Indiana Jones story. But then you take all of that and just figure out how to cut the charm, energy, wit, and fun down by about 60%. And you have this movie. What I'm saying is, I think this is a good Indiana Jones movie.
But you didn't like the Last Crusade because it had too much funniness.
It actually, I felt like this went too far the other direction.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this is a good movie. I enjoyed this movie. However, it's not as much fun. It's not as much fun. There's not as much charm. There's not as much wit. I feel like this is okay. James Mangold directed Logan, which was that final Wolverine movie. And I think, he did the same thing there, which I think is maybe to his credit in that character, in that you take a character that's this big superhero character that's been in all these other movies and it's been a little bit bigger, flashier movies, and you boil it down to a much more grounded, much more late in his life, kind of dealing with his own mortality character. And that was what Logan was. It's a little bit what we have here too. I liked it. I do recognize it's missing some of the fun and charm that the first three, even all four movies up to this point have had. It doesn't make it a bad movie at all. Okay. I liked it. I liked it a lot. But I do recognize that I do think there's something missing from it. And I think it's that sense of wonder and charm. We have moments of it. I'll get to that in a little bit. I think there are some moments and sections of this film that are really good. But I also think about 50 or 60% of the movie is kind of a slog that you have to kind of get through to get to those greater moments. So mostly positive for me. Okay. But I am going to say, I think there's some elements missing. I'd like to hear your thoughts, though, before I get into deeper detail on it. What are your thoughts on this film?
I think, we all know how old Harrison Ford is. It's you see him in a show like on Apple TV Plus, The Shrinking, and you're like, he grows old. That's a human thing. Sorry, Moose. I'm going to be quiet for a second and take some water, and you can edit this out because my throat is getting froggy. I'll start that over. So Harrison Ford is an older gentleman now. That happens with all of us. We age. And I think when I heard they were doing this film to kind of maybe bounce back from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I was like, okay. So, he's going to be a lot older. There was some de-aging CGI stuff and at the very beginning of the film and kind of sprinkled throughout a little bit. And so I kind of got like, okay, if we're going to give you another film, it's going to be a Logan type of film where he's like cranky old man.
Yeah.
And I get that. And I guess the judgment you have to make is, would I rather have an Indiana Jones film, another one, or would I rather them just not go that way? I'd rather just keep him young in my mind forever and ever. And I like the way they did it. I mean, it was kind of starting out, he was, cranky, but then the kind of journey that he takes, and definitely we're not going to spoil anything, of course, where the movie ends, I really like how they handled that. So I will say, I did the dialing back on the jokiness or whatever didn't bother me. I didn't feel like they went too far.
Well, and it's not jokiness, that's a little different. So I want to clarify. Okay. I don't want it to make it sound like I wanted this to be like a laugh riot, joking and all that. Like I felt like Last Crusade might have gone a little too deep on.
Sure.
It's charm. It's energy. It's spark in his eye. It's all those things that I feel like makes Indiana Jones a character.
So for me, that transferred to the younger character, Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. And I think it was her way of reminding him, this is who you used to be. So the transference where she was the one kind of the wit, kind of the charm, and he's not going to be doing that now because he's had he's just older, but then he's had some events in his life that have caused him to kind of draw in.
Yeah.
And specifically, without spoiling anything, I like how they handled the resolution of the Mutt character that had been introduced in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That is kind of a question of how is that going to, how are they going to resolve that? Because Shia LaBeouf is not in this movie. Spoiler. The way they used that, I don't think it could have been done any better.
No, I completely agree.
I think it was
actually, there's
genius.
a moment on a boat, a dialogue scene between Harrison Ford and Phoebe.
Yes.
Where this is kind of all laid out for you the most clearly. And it's a really good scene.
I mean, it had been hinted earlier why, like, because at the end of Crystal Skull, he's getting married, and all this, and then you see him, he's kind of by himself in this apartment. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you're more the Jones scholar. He is teaching at a different place as well. Is that correct or no?
I don't know. I don't remember where exactly he was always teaching.
There's a big university where, well, regardless, even if it's not a different university, just the way they set things up, like, yes, he's older. Students are not engaged, bored out of their, and it was like, and he's frustrated because they're not paying attention, and he's having to spoon feed them information. Like, all of that.
He's also just kind of resigned. You know, it's like, okay, this is the way it is now.
But it's just all that. So even though it was a little heavy and kind of like, no, this is supposed to be Indiana Jones. You're not supposed to hit me with all. I did appreciate it. I could see how it could, be a little sad for some people. But
and again, I feel the need to clarify because I want to make sure. I thought the opening and the setup for this film was brilliant. Okay. I think the flashback sequence, which is a pretty good extensive sequence we get at the beginning, and I thought was terribly exciting. I thought it was really good.
It was, and I have to admit, this was really good face de-aging. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah. However, it still makes me antsy.
Well, man, and look, here's a problem. I had a conversation about the de-aging after the film was over last night. Yeah, look, we've seen Indiana Jones's face. We've seen the Harrison Ford play Indiana Jones so many times,
right?
That I think you see somebody so recognizable, and you see a de-aged version of it, you can still tell.
Sure,
it's just a bit off,
but it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. I forgot about it after the first minute.
Okay.
Like I didn't. I checked out and like, oh, I'm good. I got this. Like I'm willing to go with this. This is a younger Indiana Jones we're watching, and I'm fine with it.
Right.
So I thought that worked. I thought the whole introduction sequence was really thrilling and good.
It was,
and it did a great setup for the rest of the film. I think these where we see Indiana Jones now in the '60s, teaching and some of the fresh, perfect. I'm like, yes. I know there's some people online who hate that, who think he's this world-renowned archaeologist and he shouldn't be in this point in his life. I mean, no, this is totally where he would be, I think, given the things that's happened to him. And he's never been in this thing for the money, other than Temple of Doom, which was technically, story-wise, the first movie in the story. He's all about fortune and glory. That's the thing he keeps saying. He obviously changes his tune as he gets older because he's more about preserving history, preserving what's right out there. But I totally get that's where he is in his life, and it made sense to me. So all of that, I'm loving the setup. It's the fact that we go through 2.5 hours, and I'm not going to spoil anything, and I do love the ending. Love the ending.
Well,
I just question.
Do you love the okay? So
I love all types of ending.
Okay, yeah. So again, I'm not going to spoil it. There was, even though Crystal Skull's been out, but Crystal Skull's ending has some, let's call it, if you've seen the movie, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It has some fantastical stuff. Okay, like all Indiana Jones, well, the first
all
one,
of them.
Raiders really did with the...
All of them. All of them had some fantastical elements to it. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, that's true. The stones the fantastical element that was turned a lot of people off Kingdom of Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Well, just science fiction element.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a science fiction element to Dial of Destiny too. I mean, the movie's called Dial of Destiny. That gives you a little bit of clue. I can see how the people who railed against Crystal Skull may rail against this for that science fiction a little bit element. It worked for me.
Oh, it totally worked for me.
Okay, and so that was something that Crystal Skull kind of didn't work for you, and a lot of people do. But in this film, the way it was integrated, it did work. Okay,
it
good.
Worked great.
Without spoiling anything.
I'm telling you, the first 30, 40 minutes of this movie, 30, 40 minutes, loving it.
Okay.
The last 30 minutes of this movie, love it.
Okay.
It's just the fact that, okay.
So there's an
how to do
hour.
this.
There's an hour in between.
Yeah, how to do this without spoiling. There is the final scene of this film. This is the best way I can kind of explain it. The very, very final scene takes place in a kitchen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's
Oh man.
Hold on. But there's a line of dialogue
Oh.
that is delivered saying, and I think I can say this without spoiling anything.
Where does it hurt?
No, that's great though. That's good.
I was going to say, don't tell me you don't like that.
No, I love it. No, I love all of this.
Okay.
The line of dialogue spoken is, I heard that you're back. Okay.
Okay.
And I love it.
Okay.
This is great. Except I don't think the film did a very good job of showing me that character was truly back by the end of the film. Okay.
Okay.
Because we start in point A at the beginning of the film. We see where he is. I totally get his stage in life. Like, yep, he is kind of just going through the motions.
Okay, without spoiling anything, somebody becomes a wanted man. So maybe the fight of putting up for that and running and not just giving in indicates to the person that the person's back.
Maybe.
Okay.
I think I needed that. I needed that to be shown a little bit more.
Yeah.
I needed to see this character, quote, back at the end of the film. But unfortunately, 3 or 4 minutes before that line is said, he's almost ready to, there's almost a sense of resignation. And it doesn't quite match. Okay. So in other words, I loved the resolution at the end of this film. I love the kitchen scene.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the film, though, for the previous hour before it gave me the justification to show that's warranted.
Well,
that's justified.
Yeah,
okay. I love it, but I just don't feel like it's warranted.
I can see what you're saying.
Okay.
I think you talk about a downer. There's a direction during the fantastical science fiction element.
Yeah.
That they could have taken a different turn, and it would have been. And I was actually thinking, I thought that's how it was going to go because I was plotting in my head how certain events were shown.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you line everything up, that would make sense. Like, I thought there was going to be some Doctor Who stuff going on. I'll leave it at that. And they didn't. And I think it would have been a real big downer. So you talk about really dialing it down, but
there's
they
a
didn't
moment.
do that.
There's a moment where, yes, I was exactly thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh wow, this is what they're going to do.
This is getting real.
Okay, but then you have a supporting character make a physical action with a nice little cut, and I'm like, oh, okay, good. Okay, never mind. Whew, good. I'm glad it did not end there. It would have made sense to end it there. I get why they even maybe considered ending it there, but I'm glad they didn't because it wouldn't have worked.
I'll say something. For me, the reason I did enjoy, just overall, I did enjoy the film. Good. And I think why is because with me, the Indiana Jones movies, they hinge a lot on the action sequences, which I feel like for the most part, with the exception of the CGI and Crystal Skull, all of them do them really well. But what I like about this film that kind of brought it back from where Crystal Skull didn't do is, even though a lot of people could, I guess, see this as a weakness of like complaining that it's kind of like a video game, for me, I like Indiana Jones having a problem, and then kind of like the game Myst, except it's through Indiana Jones' eyes, where you see like a puzzle, you kind of get a little bit of clues, he figures a little bit of it out, and then there's a stagger, and he figures like another bit of it out. I like how that was done in this film, and there was a lot of things like I was playing along with him, trying to see how the puzzle was going to work, and that was done really well in the Holy Grail one, Last Crusade. Like the last things when they were in that one, like there was 3 different tasks they had to complete. So that for me, if you can do that successfully, and they did it in this film at a couple of different junctures, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge actually had a point where she was like this big explanation, and that worked for me too, because there again, it was like a passing of the torch to like, okay, this is the younger generation. This is somebody that's still in their prime. So if you can do that successfully, regardless of the fact you didn't do the Paramount logo transition, you've made an Indiana Jones movie that I'm going to like. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I agree. My issue with the kind of the middle bulk of the film is I do feel like that they just it felt a lot of going through the motions to get to a certain place at the end. There's a lot of we have to go to this city and we have to find this, which is a typical Indiana Jones thing. I love it. I have no problem with that. I love it when the little map shows up and the plane flies places.
Well, and interesting too how they, unless I'm wrong, the other Indiana Jones movies do it very, very similarly. And this one, the map was in color. Things were like very kind of updated. So it was still, the map was in color. And it's actually,
I know. I think they're always in color though.
I thought they were, having just watched them recently, I thought they were like brown or like gray. And like the line is red. The line is red. I'm talking about like the actual map itself.
Oh, sure, okay.
So it was like, I don't know, it was just, it was another touch where it's like, nope, this is the 60s, but this is also a different director. So they did show the traveling, but it was done like a little different, which I liked. I also have to say, I was wondering when they made the decision to go here, there's some underwater stuff. And I was like, I was excited because I was like, this is something that Indiana Jones hasn't done. So, he's going to go try to find some stuff underwater. But I was like, but they don't have like ways to talk to one another. Like, how is this going to work just because of the time period they're in? They don't have all this stuff. But it did. And I thought it was cool to try doing that in something that like, that was something we'd never seen.
Keeping it as a relatively short scene too. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it was also pretty short. I just wish that middle section had just been more entertaining, and that there was just a moment. I mean, like I love there's a kind of I only call it a car chase. What are those little vehicles? The little vehicle that they were driving around for a good bit.
They're like motorcycle go-karts. I don't know what but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It was a fun chase sequence. It was really great. It went on too long. I felt like. Then there was like 20 minutes later, I felt like they were about to start another car chase scene that felt like very similar in the same area. The underwater scene, very cool and very novel, but just didn't. There was just something missing from that whole middle section where you have an Indiana Jones who's kind of a harried and not quite as, understandably, doesn't have the spark in his eye anymore. Doesn't have the quick wit as much as he did. And yes, the Phoebe Wallace character is kind of taking that on a little bit. I get all that. But, you look back at any of the good Indiana Jones movies and there's always moments or elements of wonder and just... I don't know, just crackling energy in scenes. And I just don't feel like that was there for a good portion of this film, which was a little disappointing, but it started strong, it ended strong, and it had enough good moments in between to make this movie work. So overall, look, it stuck the ending, and I'm happy about that. So that was the main thing for me.
So unlike with Crystal Skull, if this is the last Indiana Jones movie, which, if it is, you're happy with it. Whereas Crystal Skull, you're like, dude.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm very happy if this is the last one. It works for me. It's perfectly fine.
Interesting. I want to know what your thoughts are. We haven't mentioned him yet. We've mentioned Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who played Helena. Of course, we've mentioned Harrison Ford. But I thought it was an interesting echo of one of, I think, your favorite Indiana Jones films, Temple of Doom, how they kind of had an echo of Short Round with Teddy, played by Ethan Isidore, which I'm not familiar with him, so this is the first time I'd ever seen him. He kind of plays the Short Round to Helena.
Yeah.
And she actually references Indiana Jones, asks her, how did you meet him? She's like, he tried to steal it. Kind of how he was introduced to Short Round, kind of the same type of thing. What did you think of that?
Well, I thought that was a perfect opportunity to address a lot of fans that have been very angry with the Indiana Jones series that they've never addressed Short Round since Temple of Doom. And to me, it's like when they were setting up that dialogue, I'm like, oh, here we go. He's actually going to name drop Short Round or explain what happened there. He didn't. And I thought that was a big missed opportunity.
Same.
Yeah. Because they did, you're right. They were so good about how they wove in his son, Mutt, and his wife, Marion. So good about how they wove those in, and it just felt natural. And it's like, it kind of just, it was eye-opening when you heard those things. And it's like, Short Round's the one character that's like, okay, supposedly these guys were together for a pretty good while and spent a lot of time together.
Apparently,
and we're very close, and we never hear anything about it. I think that was a missed opportunity. Yes, Teddy. He's no short round.
No, he's not. Those are. I mean, I guess it would be weird to say big shoes to fill because Short Round was a little dude.
Yeah, but they are. But look, I thought he was fine.
Sure.
I thought, I liked all the cast of characters here. I thought it was odd to use Antonio Banderas in what was a relatively small part.
Yeah.
And a kind of inconsequential part. And I was surprised. I don't understand why.
He was good, but it was just kind of
good,
it was kind of weird. Other than just have a strange cameo.
Yeah. And I will say there were some other cameos of characters that I won't go into. That I always worry if films try to lean too heavy on the nostalgia and try to bring back so many characters.
Well, he was shown in the preview. I think the one you're referring to.
One, yes,
okay.
But I think the ones in this film were all done tastefully.
Okay.
They were done respectfully. I did not feel like they were just kind of fan service. They worked. What I really love, Ala, I think is the one. Sala.
Yeah.
Sala is the one that we saw in the trailer. So
right.
He's in the film. We can spoil that. And when he shows up, I'm like, oh well, that's kind of convenient that he just happens to be here. But then you see him in his home environment. I'm like, oh.
Right.
Okay, so he's actually here in New York City, and he's got a family, and this is why he's here. I'm like, oh,
right.
No, that totally works, and I'm good with that. There's one more character that comes back that I'm not going to spoil, but I thought that was also done well. We already referred to it kind of towards the end.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
What
do you think of Mads Mikkelsen, the villain of the film?
Oh, he's great.
Okay.
I mean, look. He can play the villain in every franchise, as far as I'm concerned. He's already done the James Bond. He's
done Star Wars.
He's done Star Wars. He's done a villain in the Marvel movies. Like, you know what? Make him the villain in every series franchise.
I guess Star Wars, he was the good guy.
He was a good guy,
but still, he can do
He's
anything.
been in it a while, but
right.
I think he just needs to play a villain in everything.
Sure.
No, he was good. I loved his motivation. I loved his goal.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, you kind of got a sense of what his goal was. There's a really interesting scene in his hotel where he's talking to, I guess, a waiter who comes in to bring food in. Mm-hmm. That was really interesting. I thought it was kind of a daring little scene of dialogue.
Yeah.
But then when you get to the point late in this film, and it's a scene up in an airplane as things are culminating towards the big finale, and you kind of understand and hear, okay, no, this was his plan all along.
This is what he's trying to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And opening up a suitcase and there's like a uniform ready to go. I'm like, wow, okay. That was cool. I like this a lot. So
yeah, and I think that it all to end the film with that kind of, I was like, okay, they're really going for it and it's working, which was kind of what didn't happen with Crystal Skull.
Right. Exactly. So, Crystal Skull. Look, I had no problem with it building up to an alien related sci-fi thing. It just, the payoff didn't work. The payoff was not enjoyable. It was not what I needed from that.
Gotcha.
This, I felt like was. Okay, sure. Were there some conveniences in the film, some plot conveniences? I mean, is it a plot convenience that, the final scenes in this film, the kind of the climax of the film take place in an area related to where Indiana Jones was giving a class about at the beginning of the film? Sure. Is it a plot convenience that everybody shows up at this one hotel where the dial is being auctioned off and they all happen to arrive at exactly the same moment when things are... Sure. Look, these things happen. I get it.
None of one of those bothered me. I will say the one that kind of got me was Teddy, who we've always... There's a thing where he's apprehended.
Yeah.
And how he's, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
He just happens to walk down this one street. Like all the other things, like, I'm like, okay, whatever. But that one struck me as a little,
I'll tell you the biggest convenience though, that still bugs me. And I kind of railed on it afterwards.
Okay.
It's in the opening sequence. It's on top of the train.
Okay.
The big, German guy they're fighting, the main baddie shows up out of the fog, which is a really cool shot. And he's holding the little dagger thing that at this point in the film was kind of the thing they were chasing after.
Right.
And he's going to use that as the weapon to fight these guys.
Right.
Instead of the gun in his holster that he finally decides to use several minutes later. And it's like, it just made no sense.
Yeah.
So plot conveniences I thought were a little heavy here in this film, but not enough to distract me from it too bad. So,
Got you.
Overall, no. I enjoyed this film. This was definitely a step up from Crystal Skull for me.
Okay.
Is it as good as the original 3 trilogy? No, not for me.
Would it be possible to make an Indiana Jones film now with Harrison Ford as old as he that could be as good as the original 3? Really?
I think if you took this film, the storyline, the plot, the characters, everything, and just found a way to add just that little bit of more, I mean, and I'm going to throw out a bunch of different terms that it could be. It could be any of the above.
Okay.
Could be a little more humor. Could be a little more horror. Could be a little more wonder. Could be a little more like just, I don't know, just this sense of amazement. I mean, you look at every single film in the franchise. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay. You think about that film, you think the giant boulder rolling towards him in the opening sequence. You think the giant well of souls with all the snakes covering the entire floor, just over the top insanity of that scene. You think, of course, you think the ending with the opening of the Ark. I mean, just these moments. They're like, I mean, they happen in Temple of Doom. They happen in Last Crusade. It's like these just big, wondrous moments where it's like your Indiana Jones's eyes widen from what he's seeing and experiencing. I just never felt that sense of that amazement or wonder here. And I guess that's by the end of the film is kind of what I was looking for. We did have a climax that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a little bit of that moment where I think the Harrison Ford showed true amazement of what he was seeing. But yet I just felt like there should have been moments more of that throughout the film. That sense of wonder and amazement. I could just see how some people come away from this saying this movie was, quote, boring. I won't say it's boring.
Wow.
I don't think it was boring.
Yeah.
But I do think it lost a little bit of the shine and luster that makes Indiana Jones such a compelling character in the series. The first 3 so good. But look, this is much closer to that level than what the last outing was. So I'm very happy. I came out content. I came out satisfied.
Well, good.
And that was the biggest thing for me. So yeah.
Okay.
Good. So it sounds like we're both, I mean, I think we're both on the same page.
Yes.
Level positive. It's just you were surprisingly more positive than I expected you to be, which is great. It was good. I'm at the same level of positive as you. It's just in I have a much deeper interest in this series. So I might be a little more critical about it, but I still really, really enjoyed this film.
Well, and I think we barely mentioned her, but one thing I can always, for me, if you can start well and end well, then that's most of the battle.
Exactly.
And for this being, here again, mention it, take a drink, a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
If I think, it started well, ended well, and for 2.5 hours, maybe it did drag some point, but not enough to make me dissatisfied.
And I'm with you on that. Yeah. If this film had not ended well, it would be a completely different review for me right now. But the fact that it did end well and it all led to some really good stuff, and I'm happy with the way it ended, yes, makes the film overall a success. So,
cool.
Yeah. Good. Well, wow. That was a nice surprise because, I mean, look, we'll go ahead and say, I did not read any reviews about this film, but I did see headlines.
I got you.
Headlines floating through my news feeds and all that saying there were some concerns.
Yeah.
Response was not good when this played at Cannes, so I was happy to hear that. I think that was a little overstated.
I'm wondering if this is going to be like this year is going to be the year that I'm just totally opposite what apparently a lot of other people like. I liked The Flash, and apparently a lot of people do not like that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I thought for a superhero movie, I thought it was okay. For Indiana Jones movie, I'm like, yeah, I think it was pretty good. And people are like, no, it was terrible. Like, so it's is this going to be the year where like the blockbusters that everybody else likes, I hate, and the ones everybody else hates, I like?
Oh no, even better than that, Chris. This may be the year where you become the franchise blockbuster movie fanboy, where you lose your steam for Wes Anderson and some of these other smaller films.
Okay,
could be because Wes Anderson, you were a little more down on Asteroid City than
I thought it was good, but wasn't as enamored with it. Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
I mean, yeah, it is strange. Expectations, probably.
You and I differed on Flash. I did not enjoy it as much as you. I saw more issues with it.
So Alan's becoming more art house.
I liked Asteroid City quite a bit more.
Yeah.
But you and I are on the same page with this.
Okay.
This one, Indiana Jones, I'm saying, no, it's really, really good. I do have a few misgivings with it, but that's just because I'm a super fan and I have to point those things out. So, all right. Well, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I don't know how it's going to do this weekend box office.
That's what I'm curious. That's what it's like. The whole, is it going to have a Flash?
I don't know. It might.
Or is it going to have a Top Gun where you waited so long, but Top Gun Maverick was farther than these movies?
I think the difference is that Top Gun. Look, let's be honest. Top Gun had Tom Cruise.
Sure.
It had some really, really big critic screenings and theatrical theater owner screenings,
and
that
it
got
benefited
huge like buzz about it.
Right.
And we hadn't seen that character or that series in 30 years.
Sure.
Indiana Jones, it's been a while since Crystal Skull, but it hasn't been 30 years. No. So the character's just been around enough.
Right.
That nobody's looking at this as like, oh my gosh, they're doing a new Indiana Jones movie. It's like, well, yeah, they are, because it's been a while since the last one.
Right.
I don't know. I hope it does good enough to justify that, it was worthwhile making the movie.
Would you want to see Helena become... I don't know how they would do it because she doesn't have the same name. I don't know.
Yeah, I would be okay if they wanted to start a series with her, because I do think she was a fun character. I wouldn't mind following her.
You're a fan of Fleabag.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you've never seen it? Okay, neither have I. Okay.
No. But I will tell you what's interesting is, the franchise that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is getting into that probably would prevent her from doing this.
Tomb Raider?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be,
So there's no reason to do this. If
Right.
She's going to do. No, she is doing a new Tomb Raider, which I love the idea of letting it be letting the character be the kind of character that she would play, which is, just as much probably on verbally smart and verbally strong as she is physically. And
Right.
her physicality in this movie was great. I thought she pulled off the stunts. She did look great doing it.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that, there didn't feel the need to have to be this, we have to have this model female protagonist that, has to just be there for eye candy because that was kind of the case with a couple of the other films.
Sure.
I think Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, both of those kind of played with that a little bit. Now, Marion in Raiders of the Lost Ark was against that type, which was why I think her character is so good.
Yeah.
Is that she's not there for eye candy. She's truly a partner. She was truly a strong character. And I like that they kind of did a lot more of that with Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character in this movie as well. What was her character's name? Helena. That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, that is
Wombat.
Oh, yeah, Wombat. It's a big thing, which I love.
I did too.
Good. Yeah. And I will say, before you forget, there was a second flashback scene right in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
That I also thought was really good.
I think that's okay. Yeah. So we are wrapping up, but I will say, I think that's the thing is that no other Indiana Jones film has had the kind of melancholy that this film has.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of melancholy because Indiana Jones is older, but then that flashback, it's a freaking downer, man.
Oh yeah. No, yeah, it is.
And so I think that melancholy is just something you don't really expect. It's handled well, shot well, but it's just like, yeah, wow. And it's just, you don't really expect that. So I can see how you're saying it kind of got weighed down just because it was a little bit more melancholy.
And again, I have no problem with the seriousness of the subject matter and the tone. And I think it was the right tone to take. It's just, I do feel like there were some instances and moments where there could have been more energy, more wit, more humor, more spark, more wonderment on things. Because I do feel like, unfortunately, too much of the movie was a little pedestrian. It's like, oh yeah, let's do car chases. Okay, now let's do this kind of chase, and now let's do this kind of thing. And it just felt like it was more going through the check boxes. Like, no, we're going to build to something really cool at the end. So let's just get there. Not really concerning about how good the scenes are getting there. Let's just get to the end. And I feel like the film suffered a little bit because of that. So,
okay,
all right. Are we done now?
I think we are.
Just make sure there's nothing else I want to throw out at the last second to derail the conversation again. No, I'm good. So we're done. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It is playing in theaters right now. Chris and I both recommend checking it out. If you are a fan of the franchise, I think, yes, this is a great entry. Do not listen to what some of the naysayers out there who have whatever bone to pick about this film are saying. Is it as good as the first three? No, not really. But man, it's still a good, enjoyable movie. So give it a shot. I think you'll enjoy it. And let's take a quick break, Chris, and we come back and we've got recommendations to give. You and I both have a recommendation of a film to share. So stay tuned. We'll be back with Foot Candle Films in just a moment.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, North Carolina, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Welcome back to Foot Candle Films with Chris and Alan here. We just finished our review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, both a positive review from the two of us. Excited to see what they did with this last film and thought it turned out pretty good. So, Chris, let's go ahead and move, though, into our recommendations. So every month now, we get together and we watch movies, some more than others. Chris sees more than I do, I just admittedly say. But we at least feel like we have at least one film a month that we can kind of bring up as a recommendation, something we want to recommend everybody to check out. The only stipulation is it has to be a film that you could actually see online somehow. Now, luckily, 95+% of films nowadays you could rent or watch online somehow. But that is the one stipulation. So it's not going to be a film that's only in theaters. It is something you could actually watch and check out online. So, Chris, I'd love to hear from you. What is your recommendation of film for us this month?
So, to avoid being characterized as a blockbuster Chris for 2023,
we're going to go indie Chris here.
I'm going to recommend an indie film.
Okay.
And actually, I saw this one a while back, but it did take a while to come to digital. It's now, I think, streaming. If you subscribe to Peacock, it's streaming on Peacock, so you can see it for free there. If not, you can rent it at other places. Mm-hmm. But it is Polite Society by director Anita Manzoor, which this is her first film that I'm aware of that I saw. You may have seen trailers in the theater because they heavily promoted it. Then it kind of came and went really fast. But Polite Society tells a story of a martial artist in training, Rhea Khan, who believes she must save her older sister, Lena, from her impending marriage. There's like hijinks involved and lots of karate and wire work, fighting and kind of stuff. And just the way it's shot, it's very bright and vibrant. And the costuming, Rhea Khan is, I'm trying to think. I don't think it takes place in India. I think it's like in America, I think. No, it's in Britain, I think. Anyways, her sister is having like a big Indian wedding type thing. So there's a lot of bright, vibrant colors and just really, interesting shots, kind of, I guess in a way kind of referencing some Bollywood type, films that are made that look like that. But it's visually very interesting. I will say, I did enjoy it. That's why I'm recommending it. If this sounds like it's interesting to you, don't see a preview. Just see the film because unfortunately, as a lot of times happens with the preview, they did pick some really like funny things that I think if they hadn't been spoiled for me, that would have been better. I've heard some people compare it to like a film that Edgar Wright might make because of some of the way some of the action's done, and then there's kind of like a weird element that I'm going to like, which I was surprised they kind of went there. It was maybe a little bit of a sci-fi element, which I was like, do what? So it's just a very interesting film, Polite Society. And I believe, let me check really quick. I think this may be her first feature film. Yeah, I think she's made other shorts, but I think this was her first feature film. Okay. So check it out. It's available on Peacock for free if you have that service, or you can rent it.
Polite Society on Peacock.
Yes.
If you have that subscription service, you can watch it for free, or you can rent the film through the typical VOD channels. Speaking of VOD channels, this is off topic. And speaking about Asteroid City a minute ago, did you hear that Asteroid City is going to be available on demand in like a week?
Oh,
like, July 11th. So like,
even though it was not my favorite, but I still thought it was a decent. Maybe that saddens me, which proves I'm still art house Chris, because I like for independent films, something like that, to have a longer running time in the theater.
What's interesting though is that the opening weekend for Asteroid City was, I think, Wes Anderson's biggest opening weekend of any of his films.
Interesting.
But it's still going to video on demand like by July 11th, which is like a week and a half from now.
Wow.
So yeah. Anyway, thought that was kind of interesting. I'm okay with that because I'm wanting to see it again.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I can watch
Well,
it
yeah.
again that way. But anyway, it's still, I agree. It's a little mixed bag for me. I don't know if that's because they feel like it's just doesn't have any legs and they're not going to put any more energy behind marketing it, or if they feel like maybe they can actually ride and get some good attention from the film and more people will watch it if it's available online than it was in the theater distribution channel it went through. I don't
So
know.
it's VOD. It's not going to like a service.
Right. No, it's
Okay.
going to be and it's probably going to be like a $20 like
Sure.
rental, whatever, for a while, but it will be pricey, but
Okay.
there may be a better audience for it there too. I don't know. Okay. My recommendation, there is a little bit of a tie-in with the Indiana Jones franchise
Okay.
per se with this recommendation. And I'm surprised I didn't recommend it earlier when I actually caught up with this film a couple months ago. I had a chance to go to a special screening of a film where one of the lead actors was there in attendance and got at a film festival and got to see the film from 1984. It is the film Starman. And it was the star Karen Allen was in attendance, which again, Karen Allen plays Marion in the Raiders of the Lost Ark and the Indiana Jones franchise in general.
Gotcha.
So it kind of made me realize, oh wow, yeah, I saw that film a couple months ago and had a really good time with it, and forgot that I didn't recommend it. All these times I've been like struggling with a recommendation on our show, and I'm like, no, there was one just staring me in the face.
And that's Jeff Bridges too.
It is. So this is John Carpenter. John Carpenter directing the film that was written by, not written by John Carpenter, but he just kind of took on a script from someone else and directed this film. It is the story of an alien who takes the form of a young Wisconsin widow's husband and makes her drive him to his departure point in Arizona. And there's government agents who are trying to find him and in pursuit of kind of intercepting him before he leaves. The premise, I think, is great. I mean, like I just said in the description, an alien takes the form of a woman's dead husband.
Gotcha.
So you imagine, Karen Allen playing that woman here in this situation, having to play someone who's now having to work with a person who looks like her dead husband. Mm-hmm. And he's basically he's gaining the memories of the dead husband. He's like, looks exactly like him.
Right.
That to me is it's an interesting dynamic. It makes for a kind of an interesting concept of a science fiction film. Yes, this is a sci-fi film, but it's a lot more of a human connection story than it is sci-fi. There are sci-fi elements to it. Obviously, it is a high concept film, but it works. It's heartbreaking. It's funny. I think Jeff Bridges is good. Although I will say, I think Karen Allen is better in this film. I think she's really, really good in this film. And, but Jeff Bridges, I think this is the only Oscar nomination that a John Carpenter film ever got. Was Best Actor nomination for Jeff Bridges on this film. It's good. Look, I mean, like if I show this film to my kids, yes, they're going to laugh at the special effects because it is 1984.
Okay.
And it's John Carpenter. Look, John Carpenter can kind of, the effects can be very dated, when you see those films. At the time, it worked. And it does add a little bit for me of the charm of the film. But yeah, I mean, they're a little rough. They're a little tough to watch by today's standards. But I still think the film is really good. Very entertaining.
When did you say it came out again?
84.
Yeah, I remember, I was very young, but I remember seeing the film and I remember really liking it. Of course, when I was that age, science fiction, anything I'd pretty much be on board with.
Cool, yeah. What's interesting about this film, I'd read about it lately, is that it was being made. There were two scripts being shopped around like in 81, 82 of science fiction films, and they were considered to be very, very similar. So studios were having to the studio kind of said, all right, which of these two scripts do we want to do? And they passed on a script called E.T., which ended up going to, obviously, I think, Paramount or wherever Spielberg was working at the time.
Right.
So they passed on E.T. to be able to make Starman.
Got you.
But then when E.T. actually came out first and they started seeing it come out, they actually sat on Starman for like 2 more years.
Oh, wow.
Before releasing it.
Okay.
For that reason, because E.T. was obviously such a big hit. They knew their film was going to be seen as
copying or whatever.
copying, but also, I mean, I think I mean, look, E.T.'s great. Starman, is Starman as good as E.T.? Not quite. I think they probably knew that too. So they basically had it sit on the shelf for like a couple of years at least before they released it. Yeah. So anyway, the head of Columbia Studio chose to go with Starman and let E.T. go to Paramount. So Columbia then eventually did release Starman. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that is Starman is available for rental any of the typical places you can get. I do think it's a good film and good throwback film, and worth checking out. And again, Karen Allen's performance I thought very, very strong in the film. So very good.
Good tie back.
All right. So that is our recommendations. Chris had Polite Society, which you can see on Peacock or on Video on Demand. Yeah. I chose Starman, which I don't know if that's on any streaming service. But I do, I mean, it's obviously on Video on Demand. Just got to do a little search and see if it's somewhere streaming. Sure. But it's available online for sure. So with that, I think we are done for today. So our review of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, our positive review of that film, our recommendations of Polite Society and Starman. And Chris, if anybody has any feedback for us, maybe they want to pick a fight with us on Indiana Jones, tell us how the rest of the internet is so right about not liking this film and how we're wrong. How should they go about starting that fight with us?
You can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can follow us on Twitter @footcandlefilm. Al and I are on Letterboxd, where we try to track what we're seeing. Do us a favor. If you like our show, which we hope you do, give us a star rating, write a review, share with friends on whatever service you are listening to our podcast on, because it'll help us reach new listeners. We'd appreciate it. Folks, we are getting closer and closer to the 2023 Foot Candle Film Festival, which is September 15th through the 24th here in Western North Carolina. We'll be announcing the lineup soon, but we're getting down to the final films that we're kind of shoring up our lineup, so we'll soon be announcing that. But if you're in Western North Carolina or would like to travel there in September, we'd love to see you at the festival.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. Details coming very, very soon. I'll say we're within weeks.
Yes.
Is that safe to say?
Enough. Yeah.
Safe to say, weeks away from giving the details about the festival. Okay. So thanks everybody for listening. We will look forward to talking to you next time. We'll have another review coming up in another week, and maybe some more movie news, maybe a couple trailers. There's actually a couple trailers I really wanted to bring up today, Chris, but I'm going to kind of table those for another week, and we will get some updates from you there. All right. Thanks everyone. Talk to you soon.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.